Welcome to The Explainer. After World War II, a line was drawn right through the heart of Europe. Today, we're going to look at the Soviet tools that helped draw that line. So, here's our roadmap. We'll start with a world divided, then check out the Soviet countermove. From there, we'll dig into the big two: Cominform, the political weapon, and Comecon, the economic answer. We'll even see a crack form in the bloc before looking at how all this created the Iron Division. All right, so let's set the scene. World War II is over, but Europe is, well, it's a wreck. And out of those ruins, a totally new kind of battle is starting to brew. This isn't a fight with tanks and planes. It's a battle of ideas. Capitalism versus communism. And everyone is asking, what happens now? For the United States, this was a massive, multi-billion-dollar problem. How do you rebuild an entire continent and stop communism from spreading at the same time? You see, for them, these weren't two separate issues. They were one and the same. They figured that poverty and chaos were like fertilizer for communism. So their big idea? Fight it with money. And this was the Marshall Plan. But let's be really clear. This was not just a handout. It was an incredibly clever strategic play. The goal was to create stable, prosperous, capitalist democracies that would, of course, be friendly to the United States. And here's the kicker. They offered this money to everybody, even the USSR and its allies. Think about that. They were basically daring Moscow to say no. So how did this go over in Moscow? Not well. At all. From Stalin's point of view, this so-called helping hand looked more like a Trojan horse, stuffed with American dollars and influence. He saw it as a direct attack, an economic invasion designed to undermine his brand new sphere of influence in Eastern Europe. Stalin's fear was pretty simple, really. If countries like Poland or Czechoslovakia started taking American cash, they'd start buying American goods. They'd become economically tied to the West. And before you know it, they'd be slipping right out of the Soviet orbit. For Stalin, that was unthinkable. It would leave the USSR totally isolated. And this quote from Soviet Foreign Minister Molotov, man, it just says it all. You can feel the resentment there, right? This was about more than just money. It was about culture, ideology, and protecting that buffer zone they believed they'd earned with blood. So Stalin's in a tough spot. He can't just tell his allies, nope, you can't have that free money. That's not going to work. He needs to come up with his own plan, his own system to keep the Eastern Bloc loyal, and to fight back against the irresistible pull of all that American cash. And that's where we get to the Soviet toolkit. It was a two-pronged attack, really. For political control, you have Cominform, and for economic control, you have Comecon. One to control the minds, the other to control the money. Simple, brutal, and pretty effective. All right, first up, Cominform. You can think of this as the political hammer of the Soviet Union. Its job was to make sure everyone was singing from the exact same hymn sheet. The whole point of Cominform was to get rid of any creative interpretations of communism. Before this, you might have different countries trying their own national path to socialism. Well, Cominform put an end to that. From now on, there was only one path: Moscow's path. It was all about enforcing what they called conformity. Great word, isn't it? It basically means total, absolute ideological conformity. If you were a communist leader in, say, Hungary, your job wasn't to serve the Hungarian people first. Your job was to serve Moscow first, period. Okay, so they've got the political side locked down. But remember the big problem? All that tempting American money. Political loyalty is great, but hungry people don't always care about ideology. Stalin knew he needed an economic answer. You can't just take away a feast without offering at least a few crumbs. And that's something else. That answer to the Marshall Plan was Comecon, the Council for Mutual Economic Assistance. It was created in 1949, and make no mistake, it was a direct retaliation. The whole idea behind Comecon was to create an economic bubble, a closed system. All the Eastern Bloc countries would trade with each other, and most importantly, with the Soviet Union. The goal was to make them completely dependent on Moscow for their economic survival. It was their version of a world market, but with walls all around it. So you've got this system designed for total control. But what happens when someone doesn't want to be controlled? Well, Cominform's demand for absolute loyalty got tested, and fast. And it led to a huge, public, and really dramatic showdown. This all centered around one man, Josip Broz Tito, the leader of Yugoslavia. See, Tito's guys had liberated their own country from the Nazis with very little Soviet help. So he didn't see himself as Stalin's lackey, he saw himself as an equal. When Stalin demanded he fall in line, Tito basically said no. So what happened? He was kicked out of Cominform, branded a heretic, a traitor, and this sent a shockwave through the whole Eastern Bloc. Stalin then launched these insane purges, hunting for Titoists everywhere. The message was crystal clear: step out of line, and you're finished. So, where does this all leave us? What's the big takeaway here? Well, the creation of Cominform and Comecon, this was the point of no return. This is when the lines on the map became real walls. You know that famous phrase Winston Churchill used, the Iron Curtain? Well, after Cominform and Comecon, it wasn't just a powerful metaphor anymore. It was real. It was an actual system, a set of institutions designed to divide the continent and lock the Soviet sphere away from the West. So let's just boil it down. The U.S. offers the Marshall Plan. The USSR sees it as a threat and reacts with Cominform and Comecon. It's this back and forth, this action and reaction, that really cemented the Cold War. It's the moment the world officially split into two hostile camps, a division that would last for the next 40 years. And that division, it wasn't just abstract politics. It shaped the lives of hundreds of millions of people who were stuck on one side of this ideological wall or the other, which really leaves you with a pretty big question, one that we're still wrestling with today.